everyone, welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles channel. My name is Erin and today I've got a tutorial for you. So we are going to be making a knitted washcloth. You can see I haven't woven in my ends yet, but we're going to be practicing the seed stitch today, which is an alternating knit and purl stitch to make this beautiful kind of scrubby texture. So if you're a beginner knitter, the only things you need to know how to do in order to make this are cast on, do a knit stitch, do a purl stitch, and cast off. But if some of those skills are new for you, I will be showing you how to do them in this tutorial. So without further ado, let's dive into the knitting. Alright, in order to make this washcloth, you're going to need a couple of things. The first is your yarn. I'm using the Lily Sugar and Cream yarn because it's one of the easiest ones to get a hold of. This is a 100% cotton yarn that's great for making anything scrubby. You're also going to need some knitting needles. I happen to be using circular needles today, but you can use straight ones if you want to. These ones are a size 6 US. And then you're also going to need a darning needle, one of these little metal yarn needles, and a pair of scissors. So make sure that you have those handy. To start this washcloth off, we're going to do something called a long tail cast on. You want to pull out enough yarn so that it's 2 to 3 times the width of what you want the final washcloth to be. Then you're going to make a slip knot with your yarn so that you have the long tail on one side and the side attached to the ball of yarn on the other. I like to make slip knots by putting my thumb and index finger in, making 2 little loops, and then putting 1 loop inside of the other, just like that. Then you can pull it so that it is snug but not tight on your needle. Now we're going to start our cast on. So this slip knot stitch counts as our very first stitch on the needles. You're going to want the tail of your yarn, so that long piece we pulled out, to be hooked around your thumb, and the part attached to the ball of yarn to be hooked around your index finger. Then what you're going to do is sweep your needle under that part in front of your thumb and then under the part in front of your index finger. Then you're going to drop that loop from your thumb excuse me, and pull it snug. And I'll show you that again. So you're going to sweep under that stitch by your thumb and under the one by your finger. Pull the loop that's on your thumb over the needle and drop it, and then pull it. So now we have 3 stitches on the needle. I'll go slow a couple more times. Under by the thumb, under by the index finger, put the loop over, and drop it. That's 4 stitches. Under by the thumb, under by your index finger, put the loop over, drop it, and pull it. We've got 5 stitches on the needle now, and we're going to do some more until you reach the width that you want your dishcloth to be. I'm not even sure how many stitches I want to cast on today, but you do want an even number for the stitch pattern we're doing today. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, oops, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, we'll try to get to 30, 27, 28, 29, and I left myself too short of a tail, 30. The last one was a little snug. So ideally you'd want a little bit more of a tail to weave in, but if you have the amount I do, that's probably fine. Next, we're going to start our first row. And in order to do the stitch we're doing today, which is called the moss stitch, sometimes it's called the seed stitch, depending on what book you're using, but we're going to be alternating knit stitches and purl stitches. So flip your needles so that all of the stitches are on the needle in your non-dominant hand. We're going to start with a knit stitch. So you insert your needle so that it's coming out behind the one that has the stitches on it. You wrap your yarn around the needle, pull that stitch under, and pull the old stitch off. That was a knit stitch. Now we're going to do the purl stitch. In order to do a purl, you have to bring your yarn to the front, so between the stitch you just did and the next one. You're going to insert your needle so that it's in front of the other needle. Wrap your yarn around, push that loop through, and then let it fall off. So now you've done a purl stitch. Now we're going to move our yarn back to the back and do a knit stitch. So insert with your needle behind, wrap the yarn, push that stitch under and off. Now we're going to purl. Insert your needle so that it's in front, wrap your yarn, push it under, and let it fall off. We're going to alternate knit and purl stitches for the entire row. And because we did an even number of stitches, you should have a purl row at the end. So we're just going to finish this first row together on camera so that then we can start the second row together as well. This is a really great project for if you're practicing knit and purl stitches for the first time. It would work a little better if I could stay in focus on camera. Because you are alternating those stitches between each stitch instead of in rows. So you get a lot of practice with switching back and forth, and you get a fabric that is reversible at the end, which is pretty nice. I also like the seed stitch for kitchen things because it's got kind of a scrubby texture to it, so that it'll be a little bit more functional as a dishcloth. Keep going, alternating those knits and purls. If this seems really fast right now, don't worry about it. You can go ahead and pause the video so that you can catch up to me, or even rewind and keep watching those knit and purl stitches in slow motion from the beginning. Coming up on those last few stitches here. And last one. When you reach the end, go ahead and swap your needles. Now we're going to do row 2. And in the beginning of this row, you can really see the difference between which ones are the knit stitches and which ones are the purl stitches. So on this one, even though we know it was a purl, from this side it looks like a knit. We can see that V shape. And where the knits were from the last time, which are purls on this side, we can see that loop going horizontally across the bottom of our stitch. We want to do the opposite of whatever we did last time. So in this first stitch that looks like a knit, we're going to do a purl. In the second one that looks like a purl, we're going to do a knit. This way you'll get kind of like a checkerboard pattern of stitches throughout your piece. So that first stitch we're going to purl, and the next one we're going to knit. Alternating, knit. Oops, I gotta be careful not to split my yarn. Purl and knit, purl and knit. And continue this all the way across. In general, if you're ever trying a new stitch for the first time, a washcloth is a great way to test out stitches on a small project before applying them to something bigger. And washcloths are functional, but they also wear out over time. So you can just have an endless supply of washcloths as you try out new stitches. It's a great thing to make with those test pieces. If you do them in 100% cotton, they're really easy to wash too. Going with purl and knit, purl and knit, purl and knit. Our last pair, purl and knit. So if you turn your work, now you can kind of see how those stitches are starting to stack on top of each other and make that pattern. You're going to alternate those two rows until you reach a square shape. So the first row would be starting with a knit and alternating knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one all the way across. Row 2 is going to be the opposite. So you start with a purl and then you do purl one, knit one, purl one, knit one all the way across. I'll check in a little bit to show you what this stitch looks like when we've got a few more rows added to the piece. Once you've been working on your washcloth for a little while, you should get a finished piece that looks a little bit like this. So I'm about a third to halfway done with my washcloth, but if you look really closely, you can see those alternating stitches. So you get the little V shapes for knit stitches and the horizontal bars for purl stitches. So you have kind of this checkerboard, like almost woven looking effect to the stitches. And if you're using a multicolored yarn like me, those alternating stitches can really pop. But go ahead and continue working on your piece until it is your desired length. And this is what we've got when you've got a square of fabric big enough for a washcloth. We're going to start doing the bind off, and for this piece I'm just going to do a traditional bind off, but we're going to do our bind off in pattern with our stitches. The reason why I'm just doing a regular bind off is because we don't need anything really stretchy for this since it's just a washcloth. So to start our bind off, I am doing mine on a row where I'm starting with a knit stitch. If you're starting with a purl stitch, that's okay. I'm going to knit one and then purl my second stitch, just like normal. But instead of continuing on to the next stitch right away, I'm going to pick up that first stitch I did with my non-dominant hand needle and slide it over the second stitch I made. So you should have that little V-shaped stitch at the top that you're forming. My next stitch is a knit, so I'm going to go ahead and knit that stitch and then do the same thing where I pick up that first stitch on the needle and slide it over the second one. And you do want to do this fairly loosely because it's not going to have any stretch to it, so make sure you're keeping your stitches nice and loose so that your fabric doesn't pull too much. Now I'm going to purl my next stitch and again just loop that stitch over. You're going to continue alternating, adding a knit stitch or a purl stitch depending on where you are in pattern, and pulling that second stitch over the first one to get your stitches off of your needles. This is the first type of bind off that I learned how to do when I started knitting. However, I didn't know that you were supposed to continue your stitch pattern as you bound off. I thought you ended with all knit stitches because that's what I originally learned how to do. So I kind of wish someone had showed me earlier to bind off in pattern. And when I say bind off in pattern, all I mean by that is that you're still continuing your stitch pattern as you're binding off instead of just doing a row of all knit stitches or all purl stitches or whatever. So it definitely gives it a cleaner look if you continue your stitch pattern while you are binding off. So I figured I would share that with you in this tutorial in case, like me, you did not know that you were supposed to do that. I also really like doing bind off stitches because it looks really satisfying to see all the stitches finally finished off with those little V-shaped stitches. This is also why I like doing the long tail cast on. The cast on that I originally learned how to do doesn't make those nice neat stitches on the bottom like the long tail cast on does. So it's been nice to incorporate that into projects as well. Just got a couple more here. Almost done. And last stitch. So when you're down to just 2 stitches, you can still loop that first one over the second one, and then with your last loop you'll actually pull it out a little bit so it stays secure. Trim your yarn with a pair of scissors and pull the tail of the yarn through that final loop to close it off. And then you are done with your bind off. So all you need to do to finish your washcloth is weave in your ends with that yarn needle, and then you are all finished. And there's your finished washcloth. These are a great beginner project, but also a fast and easy gift if you need something for somebody coming up soon. I know that washcloths don't really seem like the most exciting gift to give, but they're always something that people need and usually have to replace a couple that are in their stash anyway. So beautiful knitted washcloth to practice those knit and purl stitches and switching off between the two of them. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful and exciting to knit something new. If you want to see more stuff like this here on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below so that you can be notified of all my crafty content here on YouTube. And if you would like to follow me on other social media sites, that information will be in the description box below. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.